You're listening to Turning 75 when yesterday I was 16. This is the place where we can really sit down and think about and talk about and just sort of put our paths on the right path because we're living the best times of our lives. And I think sometimes we may forget it. So I'm here to help you come back to the fact that it is the best of times. You just have to know how to navigate it. Hi, it's Bonnie. Sit with me a minute because I want you to cogitate over this podcast. I was doing something, I don't know what, and something I heard it was saying, "Oh, this is the best day of my life." And I started thinking about that. You know how your mind takes these paths that you don't really know why, but it stuck with me. And I said, the best day of my life. I've lived 75 plus years now. And what was the best day of my life? I started to think about it. And I realized, okay, it wasn't a scenario. It wasn't a remembrance. It wasn't a date. It wasn't a situation. What was it? Was it my marriage? No, it wasn't that. It was a nice day. I won't even say a good day. It was a nice day. I got married at 20. What did I know? Was it the birth of my daughter? That was a great day, but it was a painful day. And it was a good decision to get married and have a baby. I liked it. It was a great experience, but was it the best day of my life? And then I started thinking about what would be a best day. There have been many, many happy days. There have been many peaceful days. There have been times where I've saw the best scenery and saw the Mona Lisa and went to Paris and just all kinds of things like that. They were good times, being with friends, being with family. And all of those things were a lot of fun. But would I say that was the best day of my life? When you think about what was the best day, does that day have to be happy? Does it have to be sad? It could be a sad day that ended up being the best day of your life. Does it have to be the most exciting day where you went on a skydiving adventure or something like that? But to say that was the best day, so I thought about it for several months. I was sitting down on my porch on a sunny day, hot day, but my porch has a great cool breeze that makes it very pleasant to sit out there on the hottest day. And I said to myself, I know what the best day of my life was. And it might sound funny because after I figured out what that best day I said would be, I then started thinking, well, was that really the best day? Because it wasn't an exciting event. It wasn't a beautiful event, but it was an event that changed my life completely. So the more I thought about it, the more I said, I really do think that was the best day of my life. And I want you to stop a minute and think about it. What would you say the best day of your life was? Now, remember, this is supposed to be the best day. So it doesn't have to be anything that you did physically or anything that happened to you on a great emotional, like you had this fabulous birthday party when you turned 50 or something, and it was wonderful. It doesn't have to be a graduation day. Just think about and then what would the best day? How would you quantify the best day of your life? I'll tell you what ended up with me deciding that it was the best day. It was an important day. It was impactful. I was happy. I was having fun in my life. I was very peaceful. I had a good emotional stability. I wasn't sorrowful. And so it wasn't one of those catastrophic events. But here's what it was. I was driving in my car one day and I had just come back from the lawyer, I think. Yeah, I just come back from the lawyer signing divorce papers. Now, my divorce was, any divorce is traumatic, breaking up a family and breaking up a household. But it was something that I was so certain about. I wasn't unhappy to do it. I was looking forward to next. It wasn't a sad day for me. I'm driving down the street, getting ready to go home, and I passed a church. Remember when churches, and some churches still do, they put a little sign on the front yard with a saying or a scripture or something that is supposed to be very inspiring. Well, I'm driving down the street and I look over and I see a sign on the yard of the church, and it's read, "The best revenge is living well." And I almost stopped my car when I read that. And I thought about it, and I thought about it, and I thought about it. The best revenge is living well. Now, here's the situation. I got married at 20. I was very young. My husband was in college, my ex-husband now. Rest his soul in peace or whatever he is. He was in college. I took academic curricula in high school, but I just didn't want to go to college. It didn't appeal to me, so I was working as a secretary. I was satisfied with my life. It was okay. I was with the Board of Education, and the hours were great. It was an easy job, but he was an educated man. He had a degree. Thinking about me leaving that situation where he was making decent money, and I wasn't. But I was surviving. And again, I said, the best revenge is living well. And I thought about it all day. I've thought about it my whole life. Those words have changed my life forever. The words stayed on my mind every single day. They became my mantra. They became my motivation. They became my direction. They became my purpose. And they became my destination. I realized that I didn't need to be unhappy. I didn't need to be crying, oh, my husband and I are divorced and he's making good money and I'm not. Because I said to myself, okay, the best revenge is living well. Let me show you. Let me show you, dude, how that looks. That was the time I decided I'm going to college. And I enrolled in college. I enrolled in the top business school in the country. I went with no SAT scores. I was older, and the dean of students said, well, send in this. I said, nah, you don't really want to see that. Look, I'm changed. My high school was just something that I did in the 60s. I've changed. The guy said, okay, I'm tired of listening to you, but I'm going to let you take 2 courses. You ace those courses, you're in. Of course I aced those courses because I took courses in English, which was my good subjects. Writing, English, reading, all of that. And graduated 4.5 years later. Well, five years later. I set out for a semester because I didn't have any money. And graduated cum laude. So I started my journey. I worked my way through the corporate world. I moved a bit. I clawed my way up. I realized early on that the best way to get that job that I want is to learn the job from the person who's doing it, which was usually my boss. So I said, can I do this? Can I do this? Can I do that for you? Can I teach you how to do this? And all of my coworkers, they're not paying you to do that. Why are you doing that? They're using you. No, I was using them. And I set a goal. I've always set goals in my life. My goal for my career was by the time I turned 35, I would be out of the sales routine. I would be the director of marketing for whatever company I worked for. 1 month before I turned 35, I was hired as the director of marketing for an insurance company. Goals set. In my mind, the best revenge is living well. Life went on. My daughter and I moved to a Midwest city. We were doing very well. My ex-husband had remarried, but I liked his ex-wife. She didn't have a single thing that I wanted. So her and I were pretty cool. And I was talking to her one day, and she said, look, I I know that you're not getting any child support money, and I'll send it to you. Because she was smart. She had a good job. And I said, nah, I don't want your money. I want his money. Because you know what? I don't need either of your money. Because I'm doing just fine by myself. Ooh, that felt good. And I didn't want her money. But then she let me know that he was addicted to crack and he had gone to jail, blah, blah, blah. And I said, girl, you must be out of your mind staying with that man. Mm-hmm. I told you, shouldn't have married him. But she loved him. And that's between him and her. But the best revenge was saying, no, I don't need your money. No, his life did not turn out. He tried to destroy my life by cheating on me. With who won in the end? Because I was living well. And that has happened to me not many other times, but several other times in my life where I said, let me let it go. I'm not going to be mad at this. I just know that in the end, I will be the victor. Because I'm not going to hold any negative emotions. You don't pay enough to rent my mind like that. I'm not going to be mad and evil and spiteful. I'm just going to live well. And I'm going to watch you crawl back. And you did. No, thank you. One and done. So, okay, to say that was the best day of my life? It was, and here's why. It set me on the path of where I needed to go. That quotation has been in my mind ever since. It's what, 50, 60 years? That quotation has been in my mind. The best revenge is living well. I don't have to do anything, but just live well. Live a good life. Be kind to other people. Be respectful of other people. What can be better than that? For you to pass that person in the gutter that hurt you so bad 40, 50 years ago. Living well. Think about it. It may not seem so obvious, but the more I thought about it, that was a good damn day. Because it really did help me focus on who I needed to be and how I needed to get to where I was going to go. And I didn't need to be hateful. I didn't need to cheat. I didn't need to do anything wrong. I just need to stay on path, stay focused. And if I ask my Creator for it one time, I don't need to pray every night. I said, this is what I am. This is who I am. And I trust because you told me that ask and it is given. So I asked and then I let it go. And sure enough, as long as I stayed focused, as long as I stayed on path, as long as I did what I needed to do to be successful, my promise was received. It lit a fire in my body that never dimmed. That sign set my goals. It made me focus. Seeing that sign ended up being the best day of my life. There's a number 2 best date. I'm going to tell you about that. I have a tattoo on my body. Somewhere you don't need to see. You wouldn't know it was there unless I showed it to you. The tattoo of a butterfly. I was married when I got the tattoo. My baby was a baby. My daughter was a baby. I had her in one of those little front backpacks, and I would just roam around town because I didn't work and it was boring. And I went to downtown Philadelphia, and I was walking around one day, and I saw a tattoo parlor. And I said, interesting. Remember now, this was back in the dark days where you didn't have a tattoo. Only biker chicks and only wild women had a tattoo on their body. It was not acceptable. Someone in polite society would never have a tattoo on their body. And I said, interesting, I'm bored. I went in and I got a tattoo. What was the tattoo? A butterfly. I got home, married then, still pretty happy in my marriage when I got the tattoo. My husband, ex-husband now, may he rest in wherever he's resting, he had a fit. You didn't ask my permission. I said, what? Even now before feminism took over, this is my body, dude. I can do with it what I want. I don't need your permission. You're my wife. And what does that mean? See, I was a feisty old thing back then. But he thought that I should have asked permission, and I told him to pound sand. One of the reasons why the marriage broke up, because No one tells me what to do. No one. When you say you have to, even today, if someone says you have to, I say, betcha I don't. Those are fighting words to me, you have to. But here's what I learned about that tattoo, that butterfly. I flit from place to place to place, from person to person. I have no sustainability. I've lived all over the country. I do what I want when I want. When the relationship no longer serves my purpose, or the person no longer has a reason to be in my life, bye. See you, love you, miss you, bye. When I think about that tattoo, it has also defined my life. I don't have a problem getting up and moving. Seems like every 5 years I move anyway, and I'm getting ready to go through another move. So, what does it really mean? I see the world. Think about then, now from that perspective, what was the best day of your life? What changed your life? What gave you focus? What made you turn around and say, this no longer works? This person no longer serves a purpose in my life, so why is he or she still there? I finally found my answer, and I felt good about that answer. So find your answer. All you have to do is say, this was the best day of my life.